A's and B's pretty pleased as we get into game number 3, excuse me. We're all tied up here at 1 apiece. Space Station in the first ban position. They've been banning this Arthur time and time again. I expect that to be the continuation. And in fact, I expect all of these bans to be the same that they were in game 1 and 2.
I also find it rather interesting when you think about it that Trifecta, after they lost their game, took second pick in game 2 here. So coming down into game 3 and Space Station still being in this first pick position, I'm starting to wonder if maybe Trifecta are opting or would prefer the second pick just because it allows them to have that adaptation in the draft. And whenever you're able to have a more adaptive draft style, I think it just poses a lot of issues for a team like Space Station that seems to be a little bit more locked in as to what they want to play.
I agree. I think there are a number of picks. As we've seen the bans go as such, there's a number of picks. You can go with the Freya, you can go with the Merlin. I think you could even go so far to look at some of the supports even. There are a number of options that you can look at for first pick, but I'm with you. I think I'd rather, in this particular best of 5 set, be that secondary selection and look to respond to what SSG have been able to do so far. As we said, the bans are the same. Space Station have picked Merlin in this position twice now. We'll see if they can continue it, and they will. Venenu playing the Magician one more time.
But if I'm Trifecta, I'm hoping that we see the same type of response that we saw in Game 2, the BaRRaCCuDDa into the Freya.
Yeah.
It's something that worked out pretty well for Trifecta in Game 2, so if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Do you want to see the entire draft the same from Trifecta, or is it strictly a response to what SSG are going to bring?
I think that this is response, but I also think that the BaRRaCCuDDa selection is just mandatory right now because andinster showed that he's quite efficient when he has that Rata for the early game. Weekend did the same exact thing, so this pick is going to continue to be heavily contested throughout this set.
The Hun Bats didn't really work out for Andy in the jungle Space Station style, but that said, the last game was 50 minutes. Space Station were able to do a lot, and despite the 12 deaths coming out from the Jungle Monkey, the Fear No Evil, when it worked, and when it didn't, it ultimately lost the game. So when I look at Space Station Gaming, obviously Andy needs to have a better game in game number 3, but I question if you even changed the draft. A lot went right for SSG, just a lack of early game pressure. I mean, what are you thinking with respect to the jungle there?
I'm liking this switch up a little bit more so because Space Station going to give Andy a little bit more to work with. Seeing the first 3 picks is nice, but getting 4 out of 5 is, I think, best case scenario when you're the jungler in this position. You already know that it's going to be BaRRaCCuDDa for weekend, so it's now really just going to boil down to what does Andy feel most comfortable with and what does Space Station want? Do they want a burst type of jungler or do they want a control-based jungler? And when you have Achilles in your comp, I don't think that that's enough hard crowd control yet for this Merlin to really work with. I think that there is some possibility that we might even get to see a little bit of the JeffHindla Geb here, or maybe even a Terra strip away for Space Station if Trifecta don't take it first.
SSG are actually going to opt to ban it out. I'd like to see, it's interesting because I think that Space Station needs some early game pressure, but I also think that Daji becomes a very interesting selection here when you start to look across the way at Trifecta, but early game is really not what she's doing. So I'm kind of torn between wanting to give, the reason I go Daji is some setup potential. She's going to do some carry, but the ultimate's going to allow her to set up. But then I also want early. What are you feeling for Andy?
I still find myself being drawn back to the idea of the Susano. I really do feel like that Wind Siphon just provides the right amount of interrupt that could pose some problems for Weekend on this BaRRaCCuDDa, because most of what Trifecta did right in the early game came off the back of Weekend having incredibly strong engagements from through the Cosmos or just really nice blink into the Acorn stuns. And that Acorn Blast can definitely be tricky to work around, but Wind Siphon having the capability to kind of cancel out that flurry of acorns that follows it up, I think could be a much better look for Space Station. Plus, you still get the Merlin set up. And if not the Susano, like I said, the Thor is something else that I would like to see. Something that Andy is comfortable with and proven with as well.
I do like the Thor idea. I think the Thor kind of checks both of my boxes in that you can be aggressive early with Thor. He's not exactly your Arachne, but he certainly can do it. And then, of course, the ultimate going to allow him to follow BaRRaCCuDDa or make BaRRaCCuDDa follow him, depending on how the pace goes.
There's also the idea, actually, damn, Trifecta took it the words right out of my mouth, man. The Kumba Corno was actually something that I was thinking Space Station could opt for. And
Same.
I think this was a really smart selection choice from Trifecta, because Kumba is so potent against Freya, kind of just prevents her from having any sort of free casting capabilities, not to mention the Epic Uppercut having the opportunity to kind of isolate the Freya, which would be an ideal case scenario for Space Station. But with that Fafnir now being toyed at, I think my only concern on this Fafnir is that it's very easy for Trifecta to collapse it.
I agree. It's funny because I think I'd rather see the Sylvanas, which is also easy to collapse on. But I think the Sylvanas would be interesting, but it will be a Fafnir lock-in. Now, will Achilles go to... No, all right, there it is. It's going to be an Arlong Shen here, most likely for the jungle. Of course, Achilles and Mr. Shen can swap positions, but I do think this will be Andy on the dog ban. So, an interesting look here. Basic attackers to go with Fafnir, certainly not unheard of.
I guess it's just awkward for me, because when I look at these two comps, if it is going to be the Erlang locked in, I get it. Space Station want that auto attack based style of play, so they can try and look to control the structure push, try and control, I think, objective pressure. But Kumba just kind of stops you from doing all of that. And I guess this is really just going to come down to how strong is Eonic truly on this Kumba Karna, because if Eonic is completely on point with every single one of his mezzes, every single one of his epic uppercuts, I don't think Space Station gets to do anything this game. But the other problem with the Kumba Karna is that he's typically reserved, I think, to only really being able to isolate that one member. For everybody else, he kind of just disrupts and is just a nuisance and annoying as hell because of all the stuns and everything, or the mezzes. But I definitely would like to see a big burst mage follow-up. Raijin is something that Lasbra has gone back to time and time again. Perhaps even the Vulcan could be a nice option choice here, although Vulcan can kind of struggle with Jingwei and Merlin, I think, following up. I
agree as well. Trifecta giving it a lot of thought here. Freya, Ratatoskr, Bellona, and Kumba picked. And of course, Freya can certainly play in that mid lane, although Wowy has looked good on it for sure.
Nox could also be a choice. It would definitely buckle down the heavy crowd control. So then that would really put a lot of pressure, I think, onto Weaken and Wowy trying to figure out how they're going to deal damage. But hey, they're still going to get plenty of control, I think, from that Discordia.
Control and burst damage. We're tied up here at 1. As we enter game number 3, we find out who takes the lead. Let's jump right to the casters.
Well, I mean, who'll take the lead? It'll probably be one of these teams, and the other one will come back into it and fight for a while and have the lead, and then the other team will get the lead again, and then someone wins.
And then the other team gets the lead, and then they win the next one. That's how it seems to be going.
We were discussing off air, though, these picks and bans, Ryan, and I agree with you. I think Trifecta definitely won this draft.
Easily. I mean, I think the Discordia pick is flawless here in the last slot. The cripple is really, really hard to deal with for Erlang Shen. Fafnir, he starts to transform. You feed him the apple right away. He can't jump away. That Discordia passive works great with Ratatoskr in the early game or Freya in the early game. I love this pick. I really dislike the Erlang Shen, though, on the other side for andinster. I think that there's already so many great anti-auto attackers locked in here for Trifecta and Bellona and Kumba Karna. I get it. You want more synergy with this Fafnir selection. I don't think they really needed it. I would have loved... I think Robin is way better here. I think Pele could have been potentially better. It could be good. I think that if it gets a lead, it preys on Freya beautifully, because you pin her and she can't get away from you. But other than that, I'm concerned with this pick.
It feels like Space Station had a draft coming into the drafting phase and went, this is what we're doing, right? And they didn't look at what Trifecta had adjusted or changed in their picks and bans. Because the Bellona disarm is definitely useful against this comp.
Yeah.
But not only that, then you mentioned this yourself, was the Kumba Karna pickup.
Yeah, I think that it isn't so much that they came in with a plan and they were refusing to move away from it. It's more that I feel like they came in and only looked at their own draft and worked well together didn't really look that much at what Trifecta had.
But now they load in and they're like, oh wait, we may have a couple of problems here. But maybe it's all about the start. And we've seen Ratatoskr get off to a good start 2 games in a row. Maybe Erlang Shen is the answer.
Could be.
Or is it Fafnir?
Oh, yeah, Jeff is doing the previous start, and he has not been spotted. Unless Ducky saw him walking in with third person, though I think Lasbra would have turned around by now.
Lasbra doesn't care too much because, it's not his speed buff,
That's right.
It's a different situation for him to be in. Oh, the steal! Did he get it? Oh,
He
yeah,
got
walk
it.
away with that round your right waist, Jeff. Good lad. And
Come
even
on,
the
boys.
disrespect as well after the fact. You see how he slows them down, goes, yeah, now miss some minions in mid. You Muppets.
You just
Have
gotta
it.
body block the hammer, Hindu. That's all you gotta do. It doesn't pierce gods.
It's hard to body block the hammer. It's so small.
Okay. I don't know what
I was trying to say, like, it's hard to hit the hammer as Fafnir onto a target,
Sure.
so clearly
Hey, Eonic's dead,
it's hard
by
to
the
block
way.
it too. Is he, though?
Ooh,
'Cause
wow,
he's got
he's
a bit of
here.
support with Weekend as well. He's buying time, and don't forget... Oh, well, Weekend says, nope, you're going to go to sleep on me. Good night, sweet prince. 1 kill for BaRRA.
Okay, so this start, right?
Is a mess.
This start that people were doing, where the support just runs at speed and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is why it works, because if you mess up, you are so far behind, and that's what's difficult to fight with. I mean, you really have to. If it doesn't go well for the enemy team and you do everything right, it doesn't change that much about the game. The risk isn't that high for Spacestation Gaming, but the reward is great. Now, Weekend is really far behind. That gank attempt on Duo, maybe it's better for them to just go to purple in that instance, but at least, I don't know, you force them to get banished at level 2, but neither here nor there. This start now for Spacestation Gaming is really, really good. They just have to leverage it. They have to be able to consistently keep Weekend down. Take his buffs, take his backs, because that's where you're going to get your lead now, is in the jungle and in support.
BaRRaCCuDDa getting that first blood, though, will help out his rush of those boots a little bit quicker. Given the mobility, he's going to need to deal with the Freya in the laning phase and the Kumbhakana too. But it's definitely going to change the pace now with the Hunter getting the first blood, because both times it's been a jungler consistently.
And again, Jingwei is a pick that usually doesn't push leads particularly well. Against Freya, she really does, because Freya's only way to peel for herself is with Banish, and all Banish does is extend the dash range for BaRRaCCuDDa. So he's not worried about that. He can walk up on Wowy really consistently with a lead once he gets boots and force Wowy to either give up part of the wave by zoning it or force him into using his ultimate defensively earlier than he wants to.
Aqua been quite nullified in this laning phase over the course of the set so far by Ducky. Whether it's Ducky himself or just the God picks in particular, he's not really made as much of an impact in the early game that you've seen from Aqua before.
No, Ducky's played well so far this set, not just in these instances, but in the team fights as well in the later stages. I think that Ducky's had a much better set than what we saw from him on the King Arthur in their debut set, though. To be fair, it's hard to do a lot worse. He seems much more comfortable on the Bologna and the Achilles than he was on that King Arthur.
Said a lot in the interview too about, well, not Bacon, but the second thing that he really mentioned was the fact that he feels like they've had a lot of scrim practice now, they've got a lot of prep together, so it feels like this is becoming a team fight, you know? They're finally starting to find what they want to do as a unit.
Can we check in with Venenu really quickly? I want to see what he's maxing on this Merlin. I know Pretty Prime seems to be maxing the 2, and yeah, the way the Ven's been playing, it feels like he's maxing the 1, and he is.
And what's the difference between maxing the 1 and the 2?
So the 2 is usually a little bit more utility-based. You know, you've got your AoE slow on Blizzard stance, you've got your AoE prot shred on the fire stance, you've got your Vortex and here in Arcane stance. Your 1 is more consistent damage, it's lower cooldowns across the board, across every stance. You just get to do it more consistently, but it does force you to stand a little bit closer to the wave oftentimes. It's kind of dependent on what comp you're really going for, and I think with an Erlong Shen, you're trying to hit someone off the pin most of the time, and so you can line up those skill shots like the Arcane 1, the black hole that really does a lot of damage, more so than the Vortex does. So I think this is fine. It's kind of comp dependent where I'm maxing, I think, on Merlin.
Well, he has gone back to the Bancroft's talent again on this Merlin, whereas Lasbra playing Discordia this time, not the Raijin. We said the selection seems to be pretty potently good here against this composition Spacestation Gaming have, but he's gone for the Book of Thoth Rush.
I like Book of Thoth Rush on Discordia. I think that she doesn't want to push a lead particularly early, and she really wants to ramp up towards that mid game, and the mid game is where Book of Thoth feels the best, where you get your cooldown boots, and then you start working towards a pen item. You know, he'll probably get a Divine Ruin this game just because that's what Lasbra's been going pretty consistently. Though maybe not as necessary. Though with the Erlong Shen and the Bancrofts and the healing from Aqua, I think Divine is probably a pretty good pickup here for him. Once you get those 3 items, it feels really, really potent.
And so on this right-hand side here, just after the Tomaku goes down again for Trifecta, giving the 3rd one of the game, and 75 gold in the coffers for each of the members so far. Not only that, a little bit of mobility and sustain, at least in terms of MP5 you get from these around your tower line, can help you stay in the laning phase a little bit longer.
Ducky's consistently been getting more Totems of Ku than Aqua. Specifically in the last game, I was paying more attention to it, but It seems that Bologna seems to be getting the better end pretty consistently of those totems.
But there's a red buff invade from Trifecta there, coming up quite importantly for them. Just trying to answer back some of the early experience they lost. They've actually got a bit of a gold lead as it stands, about 3 gold difference, but it's still a gold lead overall. Experience-wise, the damage has been nullified overall here.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, Space Station aren't playing nearly as aggressively on the enemy buffs as they were in Game 1. After a great start for them, they really haven't done anything to keep it up. Now, experience still slightly in andinster in JeffHindla's favor, as expected by what happened at the start, where we can lose the speed and Eonic gets first blooded. But overall, I mean, this is much better than it could have been for Trifecta.
Trifecta's starting to group up a little bit more towards the mid lane now. Eonic gonna use the groggy striker attempt to eat hammer to the face. There's nothing worse than playing Kumbhakarna in the groggy striker. You're like, I'm gonna hit you, and then you get CC'd. Okay, I'm gonna hit you.
Yeah, Hindu, you cannot make me feel bad for Kumbhakarna players.
It's his one ability that takes too long. It should be faster, you know?
I don't care.
I'm thinking
Nope.
groggy strike needs to be at raw snipe speed, you
Nope.
know?
Nope, definitely not.
Why not?
Because I don't want to play against more Kumbhakarnas.
Banish onto BaRRaCCuDDa, who dashes into the jungle, but it was a bait, a trap. Straight away, BaRRaCCuDDa forced to use his airstrike to escape. Didn't use the beads there, wisely so.
Yep.
Expected to see if Eonic would go for maybe the Blink ultimate play, which we've seen a couple of times, not the Blink, but the Yawn ultimate straight afterwards, but it wasn't the case.
I like that patience from BaRRa, knows that, wow, he doesn't have that much damage available to him, and he's still full HP.
Guarantee you next time, though, BaRRa goes back in a straight line.
Yes.
Because he cut into the jungle there, but once you do it once, you don't repeat it most of the time. You try and do something different. Maybe dash hype.
Maybe not. When Wowy's gonna whoop you and then start coming underneath you, you know that something's happening.
Pick up a cut in mid from Eonic, connects onto andinster, as does the apple. But it's Eonic that's sleeping on the ground, and I tell you something, JeffHindla on a Fafnir will make short work of a passive of a Kumbhakarna.
Wonder if gold is an option from here, because Jeff's already in that Draconic Corruption form, but BaRRa just went back to base. They know that BaRRa has an ultimate. Probably smarter to hold off on that Gold Fury call for the moment.
I was trying to work out exactly who had real confidence around the Gold Fury in terms of clear, but Venenu on the Merlin, after all, the fire stance just does so much damage to jungle objectives. I mean, it's high damage anyway, but the objective in the jungle doesn't really move much.
No, if you sit in that Dragonfire for a long time, it's paper. I mean, anything you hit turns to paper, basically, and it's so much
fire
damage.
beats
So much
paper.
prot shred, and fire beats paper, and scissors. And probably not rock particularly well.
That's
But I was
true.
like, I don't know. So rock rock doesn't really beat fire either. It's kind of chills.
Yeah, it does. It absorbs the fire and just gets angrier.
What rock?
It heats up.
That doesn't absorb fire, Hindu.
That's technically absorbing it.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
That's
it
not
is.
how any of that works.
It is now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Who's going to tell everyone on Earth that the laws of energy absorption are different?
Wait, if you heat up a rock, does it not get hot?
Yes.
Right then, that's all I said.
No, but it's not absorbing the fire, Hindu.
Aye, sure.
Heat is just...
Playing out the absorb word, fine.
But heat is just your molecules like expanding and moving. That's all it is.
Ooh.
So it doesn't change anything about the fire.
I must be hot all the time, mate.
Yeah?
It's true, I am. Ducky looking for his 6th in a row of the Cuckoos. More gold into the coffers once again.
Yeah, don't stand next to each other against Discordia. That's what you don't want to do. Because she does that.
But the problem is that what Spacestation Gaming want to do? That's the issue, is that their comp is really melee focused, and it's given a window like this. Weaken does the damage, but it's the groggy strike from Eonic that gets the kill. After the fact, Lasbra also takes down andinster, and this is getting out of hand quickly. Spacestation Gaming are not winning these trades in the middle area, and some of that is down to that rotation out of Wowy, to be fair.
Well, it's also that the Lasbra poked Venenu down to half HP for them trying to clear the wave too far up. That's what really opens that whole engagement up for Trifecta.
And on top of that now, it could be a Gold Fury attempt from Trifecta here. Only BaRRaCCuDDa around, but straight away Weaken blinks in, gets the beads out of him as well. BaRRa still has the airstrike. He may still consider going in. Changes his mind, though. That ward was giving the game away anyway. And Trifecta realizes there's nobody else in the area to cause them a problem. They'll take this Gold Fury and establish a lead in this game.
That's Lasbra, man. He makes a play in the mid lane and really just Space Station kind of caught sleeping a little bit and not really respecting what Discordia can do.
This set is really already showing me exactly what Smite's all about, which really is who makes the most mistakes. And it's not who makes the most mistakes overall, it's who makes the most mistakes and gets punished for it. Trifecta are the ones doing most of that work in this game, and also in game 1 and 2.
It's the way it goes. When teams get good enough, man, it just continually becomes, you can't wait for them to mess up all the time.
Oh, Eonic may have messed up in the mid lane there, but quick throwback gets him back to safety. I wish I could do that on my stomach. That'd be great. Just move faster by sticking my stomach out.
But it's like yeeting your stomach
I
forward.
don't give it. Just straight away. It'd be a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
I don't know if you could do it on a treadmill or anything. No, that would work very well.
No, because it'd be little like bursts, right? And that
Yeah.
doesn't really do too
You
well. on
fall off the
treadmills.
edge.
Yeah, but you could like go around a track pretty quickly.
It's got a cooldown now.
Yeah, you could do a sprint.
Sounds like effort, that. Too much.
Well, now you're throwing your stomach forward and you don't got to worry about the effort. It's nice and easy.
That's true. Level 8 for Eonic so far. He has fallen twice, but after those 2 deaths, he's actually managed to get involved in this game a little bit more so already. Sovereignty online makes a lot of sense going for that physical protection when there's only really going to be that Merlin in the game to deal magical damage.
Fafnir will provide a tiny bit, but you're right. You don't have to worry about itemizing against that too early on. He's been going Voidstone a little bit so far this game, or so far this set rather, and I think he might go it here as well. Kumbhakarna's damage is respectable
Aquarius
in these fights.
has to dash. But as soon as the dash is over, that's the end of that. But Weaken's on this left-hand side again.
No
Blink's
beads.
available in a second for Weaken. Just came back up. Is there a ward down? Is that a ward for... No, it's a
No,
ward
Bear
for
doesn't know.
Trifecta.
BaRRa has no beads, but he has his ultimate back up. I don't know that they've got the burst damage, especially with the Blackthorn Hammer that Weaken has. Just not a lot of damage for him. It's a lot of protection, though.
Wowy stepping up and giving the
Or
game
health.
away that something's going on, and there is the blinking from Weaken. Just a little bit telegraphed there from the boys. I know Trifecta were trying to do this and the red buff at the same time, but it looks like they may have failed at both here, as Space Station have just managed to release some of that pressure in mid and rotate in for this red buff.
Hammered, same time as the dash. Weaken got to use the ultimate. Andinster had a blink of his own. He's heading pretty aggressively towards red, but he'll just land in mid. Relaxed.
Will go down towards Venenu, who's got his boots online now. She's a focus, wants the cooldown reduction to the match that of Lasbra's in the mid lane. 2 different styles of mage this game, would you say? Or are they on the similar vein?
Yeah, I mean, Merlin's a pretty traditional mage in most aspects, I'd say. I mean, the triple stand switch, obviously very unique, but for the most part, I mean, his Frost and Frost and Arcane stance are pretty traditional magey. Much more melee focused on the fire stance, of course, but they're about the same. It's just that now Lasbra, I think, is set up for a much stronger later game with that Book of Thoth than the Bancroft's talent.
Andy, meanwhile, just going to take his back harpies, get the speed buff. And quick trip back to base, mainly because he wanted his second relic more than anything else, and that's the beads online now. That could help him out a little bit in these engagements. But got the Crusher online as well. Crusher, a fantastic item on certain characters, mainly junglers that want that little bit of attack speed to help them synergize a little bit more.
I mean, it's great on Erlang Shed because he procs it fairly easily with his 2. It's not like a character like Robin who procs Crusher a million times a fight. But still works well enough.
BaRRaCCuDDa getting aggressive against Wowy now, and it's Wowy that actually has to use the ult defensively. Andy's waiting on landing, but beads and egg is still available for him. He won't use either. Instead, he'll just use the safety of his tier 1 and the fact that Andy will not want to dive that. Could have been a window for Andy to maybe look at an ult, but I guess he's a little bit worried about the rotation from Trifecta.
Yeah, I guess so, but there were pretty consistent pings coming from mid lane. I would have liked to see Andy use the ultimate from that spot.
Eonic
Force out beads.
Pinned in place and then hammered, but no further follow-up past that after the fact. Kumbhakarna definitely one of those picks that will see against heavy auto-attack compositions, just because the yawn shuts everybody down, but also an attack speed slow if it does get unmez.
And remember, they picked the Erlang Shen into this. This is not a last pick situation for Trifecta. Just kind of, it was a fine pick before they locked in Fafnir Erlang Shen. It just happened to get better.
Groggy strike down, Eonic knocked up by andinster after the fight, but Lasbra was there for some damage too. Apple comes out, but Eonic's already lying on the floor. Venenu, meanwhile, a lot of damage from the Apple, and Wowy will get a free clean-up kill off the back of it.
Ven just transported that damage to everyone else on his team. JeffHindla's jump is down, and he will be shortly. That's a bit of a rough one there.
Worst timing for this, though, right, is the fact that Fury's about to come up as well. It will be a Primal Fury, which is going to help them with objectives across the map. But at the end of the day, it's a free objective potentially here, unless BaRRaCCuDDa can get here and maybe Aquarius to slow this down.
Ducky's not letting Aqua in. No chance on that one. It's going to take him a bit to get past him. Good little Primal Fury juggle among the carries. Aqua's here in combat, so he can't blink. Stun was off from Ducky, but
The idea
the
was
attempt
there.
was there.
The idea was definitely there from Ducky to try and stun Aquarius in place, but he couldn't get in range, but Aquarius didn't really commit anyway. So Primal Fury goes the way of Trifecta. Gold lead extends a little bit more so. Trifecta, after the start of this game and what Jeff did to slow things down, and BaRRaCCuDDa getting that first blood, nothing's really happened for Spacestation Gaming.
No, and now Ven's actually pretty far behind in the mid lane. I mean, he's 0-2-2 in comparison to Lasbra's 2-0-3. Lasbra has looked really, really good in this game. He broke the game open with that play in mid lane that poked out Venenu and set up Trifecta for their first Fury. There he finds a good apple that Ven does him a great favor with by bringing it to his teammates, but still Lasbra's had a very strong game in mid lane so far.
I think the biggest difference with him from game 1 and 2 to this one with the Raijin pick is the fact that Raijin's reliant on having the team to follow up when you go in with your abilities, whereas Discordia kind of do her own thing, you know, she's got a bit more free flowing in terms of when she wants to use her ultimate, and he can technically redirect it too if he gets under pressure. But hold that for a minute, it's the blue buff invade coming out here that's not successful, I believe. It was secured for Aquarius, but Andy will actually lose his life over doing that.
His purification beads are down, so easy kill. Now Aqua is the focus, knocked up again. Apple, little early that time from Lasbra, and as a result, Aqua might be safe.
Oh, but is he though? I think the damage after the fact, I was a little bit worried by Lasbra and the purple carpet of death causing problems. Venenu was late on that rotation there, mainly from coming back from base. But the chase is still on here. Aquarius and JeffHindla being pushed off way between the tier 1 and tier 2. And the dragon's going to fall down, as will the tier 1 potentially.
Yeah, now it's a 5k lead all of a sudden for Trifecta, and it's getting bigger. Space Station has just lost all pressure in mid and jungle, and that's where this game has really gone wrong. Venenu is really far behind, as is andinster. Not in XP as much for andinster as it is Venenu, but just in the ability to get in there and be effective.
Is this the difference between Andy being ahead in the games before and giving Venenu some free farm and looking for a focus elsewhere? Now he's trying to farm more because he's a warrior?
Yeah, I think that andinster, again, as I mentioned during game 1, when he gets confident and starts feeling himself and is in a good spot, then he can do an awful lot for the squad. In games like this where he's even, he usually slows it down a lot and focuses on his farm, which is fine. But Venenu is where he was getting all that farm that andinster wasn't focusing on in game 1, is now lacking in that same sort of category.
Well, the main thing is at least andinster has been involved in every kill that Space Station Gaming have got so far. Shows a lot of involvement in this one. The Gold Fury is about to spawn in about 2.5 minutes time on this left hand side. It will be a Gold Fury too. Last one was a Primal. But at the moment, Trifecta, once again, seem to be the ones setting the pace of this game now. And they're starting to group up on this left-hand side, but Space Station Gaming, Jeff and BaRRa quite far forward here. They're getting some support from andinster and Venenu on the rotation, but already the escapes have been used, and BaRRa has to use an airstrike as well.
JeffHindla doesn't have his ultimate quite yet. Some damage coming from Venenu, but not an awful lot. But andinster going to blink in. Look at Wowy. That costs Wowy his beads, but he's still plenty safe.
andinster, though, will get his heal off as Wowy uses his ultimate to try and secure the kill. Andy will survive, but he's completely out of health as JeffHindla jumps back in into Wowy. Beads were used, and he defensively runs away, but the dragon falls down again as Ducky's rotation comes up important. No Eagles Rally available, but Lasbra has the apple, and Aquarius is collecting it.
And he delivered it again to Venenu. That seems to be a problem for Space Station Gaming, is now BaRRaCCuDDa locked in underneath this tier 1. Nowhere for him to go.
Like dominoes, they're just falling one by one by one. The tier 1 tower, now the tier 2, or maybe even Venenu.
But Weekend should fall here. In fact, he does. It's andinster who sets that up, and Ven is actually out of there with good damage coming from him. There's that Bancroft's talent coming into play a little bit on that extra power and lifesteal, but a tier 2 tower down on that left-hand side. Trifecta still absolutely worth their time to lose Weekend in exchange for another tier 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would have gone out without Weekend dying there, but
fair enough.
Weekend just didn't know andinster was going to be around that corner there, otherwise he may have found himself a cheeky another kill to add to the bank so far, but that will be his first death. I'm going to little smile about it. Trifecta look quite happy on the cams right now. Yeah, smiles on the faces.
Winning does a lot for your team morale, turns
Meanwhile,
out.
Venenu, not so happy. I mean, this is what you expect from player cams, right?
Exactly, yeah. The team that's
Smiley
winning,
face Lasbra.
nice and happy. And Lasbra should be happy, man. This game is broken open because of him. He's been the playmaker so far for Trifecta in this game. He's done quite a bit on the CC chains, and his rotations have been well timed. He's been playing well.
Put it this way, with the picks and bans phase, and when you get to the last pick of a mage, and anybody on paper goes, okay, what's the major pick here? Discordia is the correct answer. Like, you are just right in that situation. I don't think there was many other mages you could have looked at there in the same and said, definitely works.
Yeah, Discordia was perfect. It has a way to get out of pin, so you're not super susceptible to Erlang Shen.
I just love the fact that he didn't go back to Raijin.
Yes.
right? Like, Raji was available, Space Station left it up for him again, weren't concerned by it clearly, and he's like, you know what? Different pick.
Something about EU mid laners in Discordia, man. I mean, Big Man Tings, when he moved over, was a Discordia one trick in mid lane for a while. If you're an EU and you move to mid lane, I imagine we'll probably see Dardes play nothing but Discordia whenever it's time for him to play. I mean,
I think the hardest thing about Discordia is the fact that the early game is where she's weakest.
yeah.
The longer the game goes on, you've got more cooldown reduction, which means you can move around a little bit more, stay relatively safe. But also it's the damage output, the control. You bring so much.
She's a good pick. She does a lot. When she falls behind, she feels awfully useless, but
That's
a lot of
Ares
mages
too.
do.
A lot of Guardians do too.
Yeah.
Tier 1 in the mid lane will now fall from Trifecta. They have a 4 minion wave, and Spacestation Gaming just looking for the right window for a fight. The only problem with these fights is it's going to be based off a lot of blinking in more than anything else from Aquarius, from andinster, and having Venenu and BaRRaCCuDDa sat at the back. The problem is they do that, Eonic's going to be sat there, or a Scourge is going to be there from Ducky.
Everyone on Fire Giant now for Trifecta. They had trouble with this last time, Graham, and see if they can
I was hoping
remedy
someone
it.
would look to see if someone was coming in. Weaken, though, is going aggressive on JeffHindla at the same time as they're also trying to pick on Aquarius. That's the frontline tanks. Look, andinster gets a good ultimate off, but so does Ducky. That pins Jeff in place, and Jeff is looking to mobile himself out of danger.
Ooh,
Groggy Strike not going to hit thanks to the sprint, but Ducky will still hit with a bludgeon.
Still, all those ults to only kill JeffHindla. Not a great return on investment by Trifecta. Andinster pushed a little bit in the mid lane. Left side tower's almost down now. BaRRaCCuDDa pushed that wave in. Not too bad for Space Station. Not ideal, but not too bad.
Aquarius just trying to see what's going on with Trifecta around the Fire Giant, as that's where they were grouping up, but he had to use his ultimate defensively. Left-hand side, BaRRaCCuDDa doing a bit of split pushing. Venenu still trying to follow up in the mid lane, but this may be surrendered now, unless Aquarius can do something on his own. He doesn't blink available, Venenu coming in. Andy around the back. Andy may not get here in time to stop this. He'll see the tail end and hear the noise.
Ducky even going to teleport to the left-hand side and stop BaRRaCCuDDa's push. So much better this time around for Trifecta. They take the fight right away, don't try and finish the objective, and then take it later on.
Feels a lot like that Game 2 situation of the 50-minute game has come back and Trifecta's like, woo, relief now. Okay, we're confident. We found the win we needed. This is against Space Station Gaming, you know? Overall, Trifecta have only faced SK so far. This was really a test for how Space Station Gaming are going to be this year. Last couple of games they've had were against Dignitas and the Knights too. Well, powerhouse teams that a lot of people are talking about potentially winning world championships, whereas Trifecta are someone on paper that you'd expect Space Station to be beaten easily.
Yes, I mean this is not a good return for Space Station here in Game 3. That's for sure. I mean, Game 1 they look great. They show they're still capable of looking like a really strong team. Just this game, despite a really good early start, I don't know. They kind of just did nothing again, and that happens to this team from time to time, where they just don't push it. That's why I was so happy to see how well they pushed their lead in Game 1. It's not the same here in Game 2. Maybe it's time for BaRRaCCuDDa first pick instead of the Merlin.
Is that where we're at?
Might be.
BaRRaCCuDDa first pick back in the meta again as the #1. It's been so long.
So I mean, these best of fives develop their own mini metas, right? And
They do.
so far, it's been Rat who's looking like he's about to go 3-0.
Well, Tier 2 down in the mid lane, and Trifecta group up as 5 with the Fire Giant Gloves to take the final Tier 2 Space Station Gaming house standing. The question is, where do they go next? It looks like it could be a siege, though, without a quick trip back to base here.
All the towers gone for Trifecta, and they might run into the same problem that Space Station had for a minute in Game 1, where
What do we do
all
now?
the towers are dead and there's no more easy gold for them, so they start to stumble a bit.
Well, last time they had this situation, though, Trifecta did split the difference a little bit, send Weaken off to one direction and try and take a 1v1 and a 4v4, knowing they could have Weaken rotating at any time with that ultimate.
But instead, it's time to make sure we finish off some big items. I mean, Obsidian Shard done for Wowy. He's also got a restored artifact, so plenty of gold for him. Spear of Desolation now done for Lasbra. He's going to continue to do a lot of damage. Ducky finishes off his entire build, as does Weaken.
That Venenu build, though, is expensive. You can feel the cost of that build just because of the fact of how many items Lasbra's got.
It's not even that expensive. I mean, Soul Reaver's the only expensive item in the build, but it's just a weird
Timing?
Yeah, weird timing. He just doesn't have any gold. He's just so far behind. He's been behind from pretty early on in this game.
Wowy, meanwhile, still on the Freya. Not had to change his pick so far. He's managed to get hold of that every single time. Is Freya someone that we should just start to expect in these games and not see her banned as often now?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that she just provides lane pressure for you most of the time. I mean, her late game's still good. It's not unbeatable. Banish continues to be Freya's best ability, but she has still really good lane clear in the early game, and that's where it makes it easier to invade purples or prevent the enemy team from invading your purple. It trends towards the early game, still has an okay late game, but her mid game tends to be a little bit weaker.
The time for farming from Trifecta could be over now, as all the minions have been pushed up in the left and middle lane. Starting to group in the middle is Trifecta now. Pink comes out from andinster. That's Lasbra. There's a fair bit of damage too, but Weaken's already up in the sky early on here, trying to zone members of Spacestation away from this Phoenix so they can get the assault going.
Knock up onto andinster. He's got to use that ultimate. Gets the heal off in time, and it's still not enough. Wowy puts him down from the sky with the Valkyrie's discretion. Good poke damage coming from Venenu brings Lasbra down to half. But Trifecta have the Fire Giant.
Well, they've not got many ultimates left. Just Eonic really has his around his waist. Everybody else in Space Station has theirs available if they need it, and they may just do that. Eonic has to get away from the Phoenix damage, still alive for the time being. Phoenix at half health. Space Station Gaming, even with a member being dead here, have managed to hold the base for now.
It was Wowy's double whoop that really saves Eonic from that position. Good defense by Space Station. Not great on how early andinster dies in that fight, but he can't go in. I mean, that's that. Akuma Karn is there. This Erlong Shen can't get in and deal relevant damage. That's why the pick concerned me from the second they locked it in.
Also, I'm surprised we didn't actually see a horrific coming out from Trifecta at some point, but instead they've not got that. There is a mid Guardian though for Ducky, which isn't really a surprise here. Actually, a second one for Eonic as well online, just to make sure that when these auto attackers do start swinging, they'll slow themselves down.
There's nothing they can really do, and this I do think this is a much worse comp for Space Station Gold than Space Station Gaming. They're kind of looking like Space Station Gold in this game, though. I mean, they're struggling.
I mean, is that just going to be? Oh, I hope it's not contagious. It could be a disease at this point.
Oh no, that's not what you're looking for. They need the antidote. They need the antidote. That's for sure.
Gotta find something, and it needs to be seen. The Fire Giant has respawned, enhanced Fire Giant this time, so even more damage will be done and regened if you do get this around your waist. JeffHindla will be the first one on the rotation over towards the Fire Giant. It doesn't really look like Space Station in a position to defend this, or even we're ready for this at all with where they're positioned.
They had no intentions of contesting this Fire Giant, even though it's enhanced. Trifecta is so far ahead. 15,000 gold at this point in the game is truly insurmountable on an even playing field. You have to take your fight underneath your Phoenixes. It's your only shot if you're a Space Station. They just need Venenu to get Obsidian Shard done ASAP. I don't know that he'll have enough in time for the siege.
Sometimes at this stage of the game, though, Ryan, we've always discussed the fact of like, well, what are they to do in the next game? But I don't think this is necessarily over just yet. We've seen both teams have issues with closing out the games and keeping a lead consistently in this set, and this doesn't really surprise me with how the last Phoenix siege just happened, that we may be here a while longer.
No, and again, there's no traditional hunter for Trifecta in this composition, so it's that much harder for them to come in and break the base. Enhanced Fire Giant helps an awful lot, and maybe Weaken's job is now to stick on those Phoenixes a little bit more.
Lasbra's going to get Polynomicon, that's what's going to happen.
No, he's going to get Book of the Dead, so he just does, or Soul Reavers.
Polynomicon, it helps with clearing the Phoenixes, right?
It does. There was a while where people were building Poly Discordia because you root them and then auto them and
Guaranteed
then
auto, one auto.
It's not good.
Apple auto.
Poly is all. I've always been a Polynomicon hater.
Really?
Yeah, I just think it's too inconsistent.
Even on Ymir?
Well, Ymir is different.
You can't play Ymir, that's why.
That's right. I'm the worst Ymir on the planet, and that's not a joke. Kukulkan is like one god that I get it on, but it's just because it has mana, and it's not exactly guaranteed, but sometimes you get it. It's a book, yeah. He likes to read. I don't know.
I still don't know how he reads without hands to turn the page. Has he got a Kindle or something?
No, he blows the pages.
He blows the pages over. We'll see how that works out. Ducky, though, took way more damage from that than I expected to. The crit just ringing from BaRRaCCuDDa there.
Titan's Bane, man. Titan's Bane makes a world of difference. BaRRa immediately starts laughing about how much damage he just did to Ducky.
He really is like the evil emperor. Ah, you can't kill me. How dare you at a late game. Maybe that's the way for Hunters now, though. We see them at the 20-minute level 20 full build, and you're like, okay, now they're back online. Because that was the old days of the Season 1, where they get to this full build and cause problems. But at the moment, it's Weaken up using the ultimate with this Ratatosker, looking for an opportunity. Looked for the dip in between BaRRa and Jeff. Didn't find anybody as Aquarius went to the back line, but he got shredded.
He's really low, as is Venenu, who dies without even getting his Aegis
Where
off.
was Venenu?
I don't even know. Was he in the middle of that team fight?
Did he blink for? I don't know. Like, I don't know why he was that far forward. That's going to be the game off the back of that fight.
I honestly lost him in the middle
too.
of that. Maybe Aqua got appled and brought it to him, but then he could have Aegis. I don't know.
No, that was
I really
the
don't
fight
know what
before,
happened.
and the fight before that. It
Yeah,
can't be
and
the
the fight
third
before that.
fight.
Yeah.
The Phoenix, sorry, the Titan under threat from Trifecta here. They're going to go ahead 2-1 over Spacestation Gaming. I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but with how this set's going, I think we need to go back to picks and bans for Spacestation and go, what's next?
Yeah, again, the Erlong pick was not. I was not a fan of that. I love the Discordia pick on the other side for Trifecta. This game, I think that Space Station, after losing that last game, decided to stay in first pick slot. It might be time for them to switch over to the second pick, because with the way that Trifecta has been prioritizing their picks, I wonder if they'll first pick the Freya for Wowy, and that could open a Ratatosker Merlin selection for Space Station. They've got a couple options, I think, from the second pick slot. And at least if you're gonna let Trifecta have first pick and they do actually first pick the Rat, you're getting 2 picks right away that you can maybe give the Freya over to BaRRaCCuDDa or to Venenu in the mid lane. I just think they need to switch something up.
I think when you look at the fact they've got Achilles and they've got the Erlang Shed in the jungle positions, they're the front line there, and they have to have blinks to get in. Having something that can maybe get in without a blink, Eagles Rally from Bologna maybe, like, we need something forward thinking, I think.
Yeah, I think that the jungle pick, this game, I'm just looking at andinster and saying, what do you want and what will we win? What will you win us the game with? Because he won them the game 1, and ever since then it's been a real non-factor.
Well, the good news is we can go to the desk to work out exactly what they think will win in game 4.
That's certainly good news. Tom and Taco here bringing you the business. And as far as this game is concerned, I think Trifecta absolutely came through, surprised a couple of folks, but ultimately looked clean.
Well, now they've completely taken, I think, the set momentum into their favor. So this is going to be a tough one right now for Space Station to try and combat into. It was a rather tough loss for them in Game 2 still. And I think Game 3 here, things kind of just collapsed, but largely because of the fact that Lasbra was just putting in so much work on this Discordia.
Yeah, the Discordia pick was really strong. We mentioned that you had mentioned Nox maybe looking for some control. Now, don't get me wrong, Strife is super control in the apple right there. And the apple is good, but just raw damage. Discordia was there to follow up, and although it wasn't perfect, we saw a couple of missed apples there. Really, Lasbra coming through and playing the mid role exactly the way he needed to.
But even when the apple wasn't on the ideal target focus, or whether it didn't connect at all, I think it still served as a zoning utility.
Absolutely.
And that was the big thing for me, is that Trifecta just felt like they had a lot of really solid reinitiation, which was kind of the issue for Trifecta in Game 1, and the only time that we really saw Space Station having much success. But I definitely think that it's just coming down to this whole Ratatosker Bologna factor. It's 2 games in a row now that Ratatosker and Bologna, Ducky and Weekend, have just been able to control that solo side of the map. And even with Andy finding an early first blood, or helping BaRRaCCuDDa find the early first blood onto Eonic in duo lane, it just didn't really seem to amount to much in the big picture.
I agree. I think Space Station, if they're going to win, have to win off of the A's. Aquarius and andinster have to come through and be the guys that are going to, if not win the game, at least deliver the late game to the rest of the squad, Venenu being one of them. Opti and 3 in the mid lane, not going to cut it. But again, I am looking at andinster, I am looking at Aquarius, and it's a team situation. And right now, if I'm Space Station Gaming, I have to identify what went wrong. Was it individual play from Aquarius and andinster? Did we as a team fail to set them up, whether in picks and bans or the game itself? That's where my mind is right now if I'm SSG.
I think that if Space Station if they take the first pick position again, then instead of banning the King Arthur, I think that they should maybe start looking towards instead banning away that Ratatosker in that second ban away position, and looking to possibly even take the Arthur for Aquarius, or if Aquarius isn't interested in it still, maybe puts Trifecta into position where they won't necessarily want to look for that Xbalanque and Najah like they have been. You want to put some pressure, I think, onto Trifecta, because right now, or at least for the past 2 games, it's felt a lot like Trifecta are getting everything that they want.
I agree.
And it's not the same case scenario for Space Station.
Completely agree with you there, Taco. Just things seem to be coming real cleanly and real easily to Trifecta, even if the game itself isn't easy, kind of their strategy. Right now, it looks like they're huddled around a phone. They might be talking to their coach, Cassia, as I said, recently acquired by Trifecta. And these guys try to figure out how to go into game number 3. I think, just like we said, and we'll be talking to the coach, just like we said, this is absolutely Trifecta's game to win, and it's up to Space Station to start putting the screws on.
And Space Station, for a team that's full of so many veteran players, this kind of just feels like the same thing that happened to them in Season 5, where it looks like it's going to be great on paper, but then when you actually get to the performance part of this roster, something just doesn't seem to be clicking. All of the pieces are not moving at the exact same time, and as long as that inconsistency is a factor, teams like Trifecta, while they might have a couple of newer faces to their roster and people who have never played together for all that long, you're still going to typically find more success than a team that I think is now starting to get into their own heads a little bit because of how little success they found ever since this team was formed.
First pick Bologna for Space Station. How do you feel?
I still wouldn't be opposed to it. I think that Aquarius, I don't feel like this comes down to an Aquarius issue any longer. I don't think that Aquarius is the problem any longer.
Oh, not at all.
I think that it is truly and honestly just Venenu and andinster needing to be in sync with each other, or at least with somebody else on their team. But as it currently stands, for the past 2 games, I don't think that they have been on the same page, and it's evident in the way that the matches just played out. There's just that constant disconnect between the two, and whether it's like something to do with the communications or not, that isn't really my point. It's just that someone else in that case needs to be the liaison between the two of them to figure out what can remedy this type of situation and find that connection. And whether that's Aquarius or JeffHindla, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but somebody else needs to do it.
I agree. I absolutely don't think Aquarius is the problem. I think he's perhaps the solution, and enabling him to be the said guy could be the right look.